Dharma brothers and sisters, dear participants in Only Till Dharma is glad. Very good morning to you. My name is Nhung Ye. It's really honorable privilege and happy for me to be the moderator for the interactive talk and discussion today. So, before starting our visitors meeting in dialogue, I would like to invite all us to put your palm together to recite Buddha name for 3 times in the Bali languages. May I request Venerable Damdak to raise the voice first. Venerable, please.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Thank you very much, Pantes. Next, I would like to announce the entities present today as follows. 1. Introducing guests and participants. 2. Organized based and introducing the guest by Thomas Sister Hing. 3. Match based by all guest Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang. 4. Q&A sessions. 5. Voice thanks by the Sister Pháp Như. 6. Closing program by the traditional song of the club. I have right, I am home. In this mindful and interactive meeting today, it's really my pleasure in order for us to welcome 1. Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, Canada. 2. Venerable Dr. Thích Đồng, the founder and president of Nguyên Thieu Dharma English Club, Vietnam. 3. All Dharma brothers and sisters or members of club on and change. Once again, it's warmly welcome you to all these great visitors meeting today. To understand Only to Dharma English Club as well as brief biographies of all speakers today. Now I would like to invite Dharma Sister Hing Wing for opening remark. As introduction or guest sister, please over the mic to you, sister.
Namo Sakyamuni Buddha, respected Master, respected Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, dear member of the Nguyên Thieu Dharma English Club, brother and sister, opportunity to welcome Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, Canada, to our Nguyên Thieu Dharma English Club, Peninsula Buddhist Study, Vietnam. Thank you so much, sister, for your kind sentence of our invitation and the guest speaker today. Let me take a few minutes to give you all brief introduction of being improvement in Buddhist study and Nguyên Thieu Dharma English Club. As we know, Peninsula Buddhist Study is one of the top schools in the field of Buddhist study in Vietnam. We send a large number of students to 3 Vietnam Buddhist University in Ho Chi Minh City, Huế and Hanoi capital. Our students are usually our top students at the entrance stand for ritual program in this university. For the betterment of the sister of English, Nguyên Thieu Dharma English Club was founded by Dr. Thích Đồng Đạt Institute of Buddhist Study. And been improving in 2020 with participation of more than 200 students. We are still learning Dharma English under the form of a Buddhist English club that we use the English as a medium language to understand the Buddha teachings, along with improvement of all necessary skills of reading, speaking, listening, and writing for our members. If we build strong foundation and valuable presentation for them to still grow in future, it is basis that for all members of the club to have a good chance to learn Dharma through English and to understand English under the form of Dharma. We will have good approaches to prominent speakers, scholar, teacher, and professor in the field of Buddhist study from different countries in different Buddhist tradition. Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India for Theravada tradition, Vietnam, China, Japan, and Korea for Mahamaya Buddhism, and Mongolia, Bhutan, Tibet for Vajrayana Buddhist tradition. Today is our 33rd dialogue with Bhikkhuni Quang in 2022 in the series of weekly international meeting of the Mental Dharma Club within the School of Buddhist Study Vietnam. It is with great pleasure Bhikkhuni Quang had accepted our invitation as the guest speaker to have a talk with our 200 members of the club on the content of life as a Bhikkhuni in Canada. Once again, thank you for joining us and welcome you, my sister.
Thank you very much, Dharma Sister Hình Nguyen. Now, may I request Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang Canada to give your message on life as a Bhikkhuni in Canada States. Over the mic to you, Dharma Sister.
Thank you. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. I'd like to thank you all for inviting me here today to speak, and I'm very pleased and honored to join you. And from Canada via Zoom, it's wonderful what technology can do now. Buddhism is among the smallest minority religions in Canada, with a very slowly growing population in the country, partly the result of conversion, with only 4.5% of new immigrants identifying themselves as Buddhist. And as of the last census, the number of recorded Buddhists was 366,830, or a little over 1% Canadian Buddhists. Talking about myself is not something I feel comfortable doing. However, to help with the consistent curiosity about my journey, I will attempt to lead into the talk with a little about myself. People often really want to hear about the lives of Western nuns. How do we live? What are our problems? And sometimes it's difficult to discuss this, because when speaking about problems, there is the risk of complaining or of others thinking we are complaining. And when speaking about joys, there's the risk of being too light or of others perceiving us as arrogant. Many times over the past 40 years, especially since my ordination, I've been asked either when or how I became interested in Buddhism. And for a long time, I'd answer that it was around 1974, and it was through Advaita Vedanta, in which I'd become interested while studying to be a yoga teacher. And later, while training as a psychotherapist, I became aware of a closer truth, which is that I started on this path when I was very young, at least in this life. My earliest memory of being disillusioned by Christianity, and I don't want you to think that I'm disparaging any religion at all if I say this. This is my experience, and at this time I was a very young child. I became disillusioned by Christianity when I was about 4 years of age. And I went to Sunday school, where I had heard that if I didn't believe in God, I was going to go to hell when I died. And I didn't believe in God, and was very fearful in case what they said was true. And if what they told me was accurate, I was in big trouble, because God was rather bad-tempered, at least the way he was taught to us at that time. He sent floods to kill everybody on the planet, and he turned people into pillars of salt. So hoping that she could convince me, I asked my Sunday school teacher how she knew there was a God. And she asked me, "Hasn't your mother told you there was a God?" And yes, I said, "But how does my mother know there is a God?" And she responded with, "Your grandmother probably told her." And I said, "Yes, but how does my grandmother know there's a God?" And she hesitated for a second and then said, "Haven't you heard Father Fricker say there is a God? He was the priest at the church." "Yes," I said, "but how does he know there is a God?" And with some exasperation, she told me that it was in the Bible and that I should just have faith that it was true. And I realized then that nobody could prove to me there was a God. Everybody had heard it from somebody else, or read it in a book that had been written by somebody else. And although I went to church under protest until I was around 15 years old, I believe that the church lost me when I was around 4 or 5 years old. In 1953, I was in grade 1 and was very excited about learning to read. And I learned to read phonetically and sounded out every word. And my mother took me to a store near our home where there was a rack of paperback books. One book had a title in red with the word red on it, and my excitement at being able to read a word outside of the classroom mounted as I went along reading as best I could the titles of the books. And then I asked my mother, what is Buddhism? I sounded out the word for her that was the title of one of the books. And she told me it was a religion in Japan. My family was Anglican, which is a Christian denomination, and my best friend was Pentecostal, which is a different Christian denomination, and the kids across the street from us were Catholic. So another religion was something that was a surprise to me. Do they believe in Jesus? I asked, remembering that the Jews did not. And no, they don't, she said. Well, what do they believe? I asked. And she said, I don't know. I can't explain it. They don't think like we do. And I felt as though I had been hit by a bolt of lightning directly in the chest. I thought I was going to fall backwards. This was followed immediately by a rush of excitement. What was different about people on the other side of the world that could think differently than us? How did they do it? I wasn't even sure how I thought. Where did my thoughts come from? It was just something I did. And I remember standing outside the store, making a face probably, and my mother saying, "What are you doing?" And she was very impatient with me, and I responded that I'm trying to think differently. And she told me to hurry up. I could take you to the exact spot where that happened. It was such a powerful thing for me at that time. And when she said hurry up and I followed her, I started to cry. I can only describe it like I felt like there was some grief, and I had no way of explaining the deep reaction to her comment. And I followed after her, wondering where I would ever find anybody living nearby, because I didn't know any Japanese people. At that time in Canada, if you were from Ireland, Scotland, or England, or France, very few other people lived here. But I remember promising myself, because it seemed so important, that one day, I will learn to think like the Buddhism people do in Japan. And all this while, I still felt the impact in my chest. A year or two after that incident, so when I was about 7, probably 8 or 9, I was intrigued by a Buddha statue in front of which my paternal grandmother burned incense and placed flowers and candles. She never ever said she was Buddhist. But I loved her because nobody else I knew did this. Nobody burned incense. Nobody even knew what incense was. And I asked my grandmother why she burned incense and had a Buddha, and she said to me, "It brings me a lot of peace." And I felt very comforted by that, and from that moment on felt peace whenever I saw a Buddha statue. So the seeds for my eventual ordination were planted when I was very young by people who did not know they were planting them, and to whom I am very grateful. So it's with my heart and my mind that I thank my mother and my grandmother and my Sunday school teacher, my 3 early teachers. The path has been fraught with doubt, pain, and joy. I consider my work to be a small contribution toward helping all sentient beings. I was ordained in Vietnam as a Shramanarika in 2002 at Chua Long Ta in Long Can by Most Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. And my Bhikkhuni ordination took place in 2009 at Chua Yu Yak in Ho Chi Minh City. I studied for as long as my visa would allow me to stay in Vietnam, which usually was only 3 months at a time. And then I would come back to Canada and study with the monks in Canada. Didn't know any nuns, any bhikkhus or bhikkhunis. I have a small temple where I live on my own. Lay students came several times a week until the pandemic. And we do formal meditation, chanting, and I give talks. And now we do it all online. Prior to becoming ordained as a Vietnamese nun, I studied in the Korean Son tradition. So in the evening, I chant the Bal Gata in Vietnamese. And because of my training in the Korean tradition, I chant the homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Korean. The salutation to the great teacher Shakyamuni is chanted in Pali, as we just did a little earlier. And the great compassion Dharani is chanted in Sanskrit. And all of the rest of the chanting is done in English. I've been fortunate enough to have met other Western Buddhist nuns, all from different traditions. Some are from the Tibetan tradition. I've met more than one from the Theravada tradition, and 3 Canadian in the Zen tradition or Tinh tradition, and an Australian nun. And what do we have in common? The Dharma spoke deeply to our hearts. And so, counter to all expectations of our cultures and our families, we quit our jobs, parted from our loved ones, were ordained as Buddhist nuns, and in some cases went to live in other countries for as long as our visas would allow us to stay there. And who would take such radical steps in order to practice the Dharma? And how are we unlike the Asian women who are ordained? Now, this is a general comment. Asian women receive ordination when they are young, with not much life experience, or when their families have grown, or they are elderly and seek life in a monastery for spiritual, maybe physical comforts. On the other hand, most Western nuns are ordained as adults. They are educated, have careers. Many have had families and children. They bring their talents and skills to the monastery, and they also bring their habits and expectations that have been well polished through the years of interactions in the world. When Asian women are ordained, their families and communities support them. There may be some exceptions to that, but I think my observation is they are supported. So becoming a nun is socially acceptable and respectable. In addition, Asian cultures focus more on the group than individual identity, so it is comparatively easy for the newly ordained to adapt to community life in a monastery. Perhaps as children they shared bedrooms with their siblings. They were taught to place the welfare of their family above their own and to respect and defer to their parents and teachers. And Western nuns, on the other hand, grew up in a culture that stresses the individual over the group, and they therefore tend to be individualistic. Western women have to have strong personalities to become Buddhist nuns. Many of them, their families reproach them for relinquishing a well-paying job and not having children. Western society brands them as parasites who don't want to work because they are lazy. And Western culture accuses them of repressing their sexuality and avoiding intimate relationships. So a Western woman who cares about what others think about her is not going to become a Buddhist nun. She is far more likely to be self-sufficient and self-motivated. And these qualities, while in general good, can be carried to an extreme, sometimes making it more difficult for these highly individualistic nuns to live together in a community. Now, that is if there was a community to live in. As first-generation Western Buddhist nuns, because I've had discussions with other nuns about this, we indeed lead the homeless life. There are very few monasteries in the West. And if we want to stay in one, we generally have to pay to do so because the community has no money. And that represents some challenges. How does someone with monastic precepts, which include wearing robes, shaving one's head, not handling money, not doing business, earn money? I was lucky as I owned a home, which I was willing to give up when I became a Bhikkhuni. But my master in Vietnam told me, you have to live somewhere, so keep your house. So when I returned to Canada, my house became a small temple. It's known as Little Heron Zen Hermitage. Many Westerners assume that there is an umbrella institution, similar to the Catholic Church, that looks over us. And this is not the case. I get asked if the pay is good. And I have to explain to people that our teachers do not provide for us financially. And some Western nuns have savings that are rapidly consumed because it's very expensive to live in the West. People in Asia oftentimes think that because we live in the West, we have a lot of money, but it's very expensive to live here. So when the money comes in, it doesn't go very far. And we have to pay for heat and winter, different clothing because we can't wear the same clothing all year round. Some nuns have kind friends and family who sponsor them, and still others are forced by conditions to put on lay clothes and get a job. And this makes keeping the ordination precepts difficult and prevents them from studying and practicing intensely, which is the main purpose for which they were ordained. So how does one receive monastic training and education? As I said, some Western nuns stay in Asia for as long as they can. But there too, they face visa problems and language problems. Most of the teachings are in another language, so the Western nuns cannot understand what is being taught. So I was lucky. I had a nun who translated for me and also spoke English when I was in Vietnam. So in addition, memorizing texts in another language is not meaningful to a Western nun. We seek to learn the meaning of the teachings and how to practice them. We want to learn meditation and to experience the Dharma. So while the ethnic nuns grew up with Buddhism in their families and culture since childhood, the Western nuns are learning a new faith, a new practice, a new religion, a new philosophy, and so they have different questions and issues. So for example, while a Vietnamese nun takes the existence of the three jewels for granted, a Western nun wants to know exactly what the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are, and how to know they actually exist. So therefore, even in India, the Western nuns do not fit in the established Buddhist religious organizations. One Western Tibetan nun told me that nuns are sent to work in Dharma centers in the West, where they receive room and board and a tiny stipend for personal needs in return for working for the center. And although there, they receive teachings in their own language, for the newly ordained, life in Dharma centers can be difficult because they live amongst lay people. So the curriculum in the center is designed for the lay students and the resident Lama, if there is one. And the Lama is usually too busy with the lay community to train one or two Western monastics who live there. So difficulties such as those described above are also challenges for practice. To remain a nun, a Western woman needs to implement the Buddhist teachings in order to make her mind happy in whatever circumstances she finds herself. She has to meditate deeply on impermanence and death so that she can be comfortable with financial insecurity. She has to contemplate the disadvantages of attachment to the 8 worldly concerns so that praise and blame from others do not affect her mind. She must reflect on karma and its effects in order to accept the difficulties she encounters in receiving an education. And she needs to generate the bodhicitta, the altruistic heart that wishes to remedy these situations so that others do not have to encounter them in the future. And therefore, her difficulties are the catalyst for her practice. And through practice, her mind is transformed and becomes peaceful. One of the biggest challenges is to live as a celibate in the West, where sexuality spills from the soap boxes and the soap operas and the TV, in everything. How can one be emotionally happy when the media and societal values pronounce romantic relationships as the most important thing? And again, practice is the secret. To keep our precepts, we have to look beyond superficial appearances. We have to understand deeply the ingrained emotional and sexual patterns of attachment that keep us imprisoned in cyclic existence. We must understand the nature of our emotions and learn to deal with them in constructive ways without depending on others to comfort us or to make us feel good about ourselves. And people wonder if we see our families and our old friends and if we miss them. We're not cloistered. We can visit our families and friends. We do not simply stop caring for others because we're ordained. However, we do try to transform the type of affection we have for them. So for lay people in worldly life, affection leads to clinging attachment, an emotion that exaggerates the good qualities of someone and then wishes not to be separated from him or her. And this attitude breeds partiality, wishing to help only our dear ones, maybe harm the people we don't like, and ignore the multitudes of beings we don't know. My experience is when I'm gone for months at a time, I do not think of my family and friends. I am, however, so happy to see them when I return. So I choose to call this loving detachment. So as monastics, we have to work strongly with this tendency, using the meditations on equanimity, love, compassion, and joy to expand our hearts so that we see all beings as lovable. And the more we gradually train our mind in this way, the less we miss our dear ones, and the more we feel close to all others simply because they are sentient beings who want happiness and do not want suffering, just as intensely as we do. This open-hearted feeling does not mean we don't cherish our parents. To the contrary, the meditations on the kindness of our parents open our eyes to all that they did for us. However, rather than be attached only to them, we endeavor to extend love, the feeling of love, to all others as well. So great internal satisfaction arises as we develop more equanimity and open our hearts to cherish all other beings. And here too, we see what seems to be a difficulty, not living in close contact with our family and old friends. We see this to be a factor that stimulates spiritual growth when we apply our Dharma practice to it. So the experience of training as a nun, both in the Vietnamese and the Korean traditions, has enriched my practice and helped me to see the Dharma in all the Buddhist traditions, despite the externally diverse, culturally conditioned forms that each use. The beauty, as I see it, in the Vietnamese tradition is that my master was ordained in Pure Land and Theravada, and he sent me to study with a Tien Bhikkhuni. And after ordination, we need to receive training in the precepts if we are to keep them well. So a new nun should request one of her teachers to give her teachings on the meaning of each precept, which constitutes a transgression, and how to purify transgressions should they occur. And while a Western nun can usually receive teachings on the precepts without too much difficulty, due to the lack of monasteries for Western nuns, she often misses out on the practical training that comes through living with other nuns in community. I consider myself lucky because I did study in community in Vietnam, and I studied in community. I went down to the United States and studied in community in Boston, at a Vietnamese temple in Boston. As a nun, our first responsibility is to live according to our precepts as best we can. Precepts are not a heavy burden, but a joy. In other words, they are voluntarily taken because we know they will help us in our spiritual pursuit. Keeping the precepts in the West in the 21st century can be a challenge. The precepts were established by the Buddha during his life in India in the 6th century BC, in a culture and time clearly different from our own. And just as an aside, I want to say one German archaeologist to whom I spoke with in Lumbini told me that they believe that Siddhartha was born approximately 300 years earlier than the time to which we usually refer. So not 2,600 years ago, more like maybe 2,900 years ago. And while nuns in some Buddhist traditions, for example, the Theravada, try to keep the precepts literally, others come from traditions that allow a little more leeway. So by studying the Vinaya and knowing the stories of the specific events that prompted the Buddha to establish each precept, nuns will come to understand the purpose of each precept. And then we will know how to adhere to its purpose, although they may not be able to follow it literally. For example, one of the Bhikkhuni precepts is not to ride in a vehicle. If we followed that literally, it would be difficult to go to receive or to give teachings, let alone to live as a nun in a city. So in ancient India, vehicles were drawn by animals or human beings, and riding in them was reserved for the wealthy. And the Buddha's concern when he made this precept was for nuns to avoid causing suffering to others or generating arrogance. To adapt that to modern societies, nuns should not try to ride in expensive vehicles and avoid becoming proud if someone drives them somewhere in a nice car. So in this way, we must learn about the precepts and traditional monastic lifestyle and then adapt to the conditions that we live in. And of course, there will be differences in interpretations and implementation among traditions. Monasteries in the same tradition might have differences, and individuals within a monastery would have different interpretations. So we need to be tolerant of these differences and to use them to motivate us to reflect deeper on the precepts. So for example, Asian nuns, and this is one of the precepts, generally do not shake hands with men, while most Western nuns do. So here in Canada and other Western countries, people, both men and women, hug each other as a greeting. And if I refused a hug, I would be considered unfriendly and having very poor manners. And if we do this simply to conform to Western customs, I don't see this as a problem. However, each nun must be mindful so that the attraction and attachment do not arise when she shakes hands or hugs. So such variations in observing the precepts can be accepted due to cultural differences, etiquette, and the habit in different countries. So the precepts form a framework for further Dharma practice. And as nuns here in the West, we therefore want to study and practice the Buddha's teachings and share them with others as much as possible. And we also do practical work to sustain ourselves and benefit others. Western nuns live in a variety of circumstances, sometimes in community, a monastery or a Dharma center, if there is one, and as I do, sometimes alone. In all of these situations, our day begins with prayers and meditation before breakfast. My day begins with 1 hour meditation, chanting, and a short yoga practice. And after that, I go about my daily activities. And in the evening, I again meditate, and I offer chanting for those who are ill. And sometimes it can be a challenge to fit several hours of meditation practice in a busy schedule. But since meditation, mantras, and dharanis are what sustain us, we make strong efforts to navigate the demands made on our time. And when the work at a Dharma center is especially intense, or many people need our help, it is tempting to take the time out of our practice. However, doing that exacts a toll, and if done for too long, it can make keeping ordination difficult. And thus, every year we take a few weeks or months, if possible, out of our busy lives to do meditation retreat in order to deepen our practice. And many Western monastics take their, what is normally called the rains retreat. We do it in the wintertime because it's too hard to get around in all the snow and ice. And as a Western nun, I encounter a variety of interesting events in daily life. Some people recognize the robes and know I am a Buddhist nun. Others do not. Wearing my robes in the city, I've had people come up to me and compliment me on my outfit. I have complete strangers tell me that not everyone can wear her hair like that, but that cut looks great on you. A child in a park opened his eyes wide in amazement and said to his mother, "Look, Mummy, that lady doesn't have any hair." And I've had more than one stranger over the years approach me and in a kind, gentle way said, "Don't worry, dear, after the chemo is finished, your hair will grow back again." Many of them. And when I went to visit somebody at the cancer clinic near where I live, they thought I was a patient. So you can see it's not common to see nuns here. When we walk down the street, occasionally someone will say, "Hare Krishna." I've had somebody say to me once, only one person said this, "Jesus is the only way." And some people are delighted and want to know if I know the Dalai Lama, or how can they learn to meditate, or where is there a Buddhist center in town. So in the frenzy of Canadian life, they are inspired to see one who represents spiritual life. And once I was stopped when I was walking on the street by a woman who asked frantically if I was a Buddhist nun. I was wearing my brown robes that day, the clothes, and many people are familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh and his students, so they recognized that possibly I might have been one of his students. There are so few of us around that she wanted to make sure before she asked me, before she talked to me. And she had a problem that she wanted me to solve quickly. It was a big problem, could not be solved quickly. And I talked briefly about impermanence. And as she left, she said, "Your calmness and smile has helped me. Thank you very much. And thank you for your meditation practice." I sent some photos to my Vinaya master in Vietnam. One was of me shoveling snow in the winter, and the snow was very deep. I had on big boots, heavy winter pants, and a coat, a toque, it's a hat that we wear, and a scarf. And she responded by saying, "How will anybody know you are a nun?" And I had to tell her that very few people know I'm a nun, even without the heavy winter clothing, as there are very few nuns. So with my long dress and head covering, many people simply think I'm a Muslim woman. Some people are very respectful to Asian monastics and eager to serve them, but see Western monastics and the respect sometimes falls away. I had one young Vietnamese man who said, "I can't be a real nun because I'm not Vietnamese." And other people appreciate all monastics and are very courteous. Western nuns never know when we go somewhere how others will treat us. At times this can be disquieting, but in the long run, it makes us more flexible and helps us to overcome our attachment to reputation. We use such situations to let go of attachment to being treated well and aversion to being treated poorly. Yet, for the sake of the Dharma and the Sangha, we sometimes have to politely instruct people on the proper way to act around monastics. So most Canadians who come to my temple, come to the hermitage, really want to do it correctly. They don't want to make a mistake. So what you take for granted in Vietnam, such as how to treat a monastic, how to behave in a temple, has to be learned here. So I spend some time with people giving these types of instructions. And as I feel uncomfortable telling Westerners how they should treat me, I say with respect, but there's more to it than that. A Tibetan nun kindly came and spoke to them, teaching them the etiquette. And some Westerners are so worried about making a mistake, they sometimes look very nervous. And I tell them that we all make mistakes, and that it will come with practice. And I have jokingly told them that I have never chased anybody away for not bowing properly. And that helps to relieve them of some of the tension they may feel when they are newly studying the Dharma. The word Sangha is used in a variety of ways, and when we speak of the three jewels of refuge, the Sangha jewel is refers to any individual, lay or monastic here, who has realized the emptiness of inherent existence directly. And this unmistaken realization of reality renders such a person a reliable object of refuge. And the conventional Sangha is a group of 4 or more ordained monastics. And in traditional Buddhist societies, this is the meaning of the term Sangha. And an individual monastic is a Sangha member. The Sangha members and the Sangha community are respected not because of the individuals, because they are special in and of themselves, because they hold the precepts given by the Buddha. And their primary objective in life is to tame their minds to apply these precepts and the Buddhist teachings. And in the West, people often use the word Sangha loosely to refer to anyone who frequents a Buddhist temple or a Buddhist center. And this person may or may not have taken even the 5 lay precepts, to abandon killing, stealing, unwise sexual behavior, lying, and intoxicants. Using Sangha in this all-encompassing way can lead to misinterpretation and confusion. So I believe it is better to stick to the traditional usage, and I try to use it in that way when I'm talking to people. And individual nuns vary considerably, and any discussion of the role of the Sangha has to take this into account. Excuse me. Because Buddhism is relatively new in the West, some people receive ordination without sufficient preparation. And others later find that the monastic lifestyle is not suitable for them, and they give back their vows and return to lay life. And some nuns are not mindful or have strong disturbing attitudes and cannot observe the precepts well. And it is clear that not everyone who is a Buddhist nun is a Buddha. So in discussing the role of the Sangha, we are considering those who are happy as monastics, work hard to apply the Dharma to counteract their disturbing attitudes and negative behavior, and are likely to remain monastics for the duration of their lives. And some Westerners doubt the usefulness of the Sangha. Although individual Sangha members came from all classes of society in Asia, everyone received a religious education once he or she is ordained. And one aspect of the Sangha's role was to study and preserve the Buddhist teachings for future generations. Now in the West, most everyone is literate and can study the Dharma. University professors and scholars in particular studied the Buddhist teachings and give lectures on Buddhism. And in previous times, it was the Sangha that had the time to do long meditation retreats in order to actualize the meaning of the Dharma. But now in the West, some lay people take months or years off work in order to do long meditation retreats. So because of the changes in society, now lay people can study the Dharma and do long retreats just as the monastics do. And this makes them wonder, what is the use of monastics? Why can't we be considered the modern Sangha? So having lived part of my life, a good part of my life as a layperson, and part as a Sangha member, my experience tells me there is a difference between the two. Even though some lay people do the traditional work of the Sangha, and some may do it better than some monastics, there is nevertheless a difference between a person who lives with many ethical precepts, as many as we nuns have to take, and another who does not. So the precepts put us right up against our old habits and emotional patterns. Because a lay retreatant who tires of the austerity of a retreat can bring a retreat to a close, get a job, and resume a comfortable lifestyle with beautiful possessions. And a university professor may make herself attractive. She may also receive part of her identity by being in relationship to her husband or partner. And if she does not already have a partner who gives her emotional support, that option is open to her. She blends in. That is, she can teach Buddhist principles, but when she is in society, no one recognizes her as a Buddhist, let alone as a religious person. She does not represent the Dharma in public, and thus it is easier for her behavior to be less than exemplary. She may go to a holiday resort and lie on the beach to get a tan, and no one thinks twice about it. And if she boasts about her successes and blames others when her plans do not work out, her behavior does not stand out. In other words, her attachment to sense pleasure, praise, and reputation are seen as normal and may easily go unchallenged either by herself or by others. And for a nun, however, the scenario is quite different. We wear robes and shave our heads so that we and everyone else around us know that we aspire to live according to certain precepts. And this aids us tremendously in dealing with attachments and aversions as they arise in daily life. So men know she is celibate, a nun, and they relate to her differently. So both she and the men she meets do not become involved in subtle flirting games and self-conscious behavior that people engage in when they are attracted to one another. A nun does not have to think about what to wear or how she looks, because the robes and the shaved head help her to cut through such attachments. And they bring a certain anonymity and equality if she is able to live with other monastics. For no one can draw special attention to herself due to her appearance. So the robes and the precepts helped me become much more aware of my actions or karma and their results. And then has to put much time and energy into reflecting on her potential and aspiring to think, feel, speak, and act in ways that benefit herself and others. And thus, even when she is alone, the power of the precepts make her more mindful not to act in unethical or impulsive ways. One friend of mine, a professor of Buddhism at a university here, told me she knows the sutras very well, but she will never be enlightened because she doesn't practice. And a new nun who had been a dedicated and knowledgeable lay practitioner for years told me that before ordination, she did not understand how one could feel or act differently simply because of being a nun. However, after ordination, she was surprised at the power of the ordination. She and I talked about this. Her internal sense of being a practitioner and her awareness of her behavior had changed considerably because of it. And some people associate monasticism with austerity and self-centered spiritual practice, contrasting this with the bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattva practice of benefiting other beings. There's no split between between being a monastic and being a bodhisattva. They go together. Many people in the West, particularly those from Christian Protestant cultures, have preconceived ideas of monastics as people who withdraw from society and do not contribute to its betterment. They think monastics are escapists who cannot face the difficulties of ordinary life. And my experiences and observations have not validated any of these preconceptions. The fundamental cause of our problems is not the external circumstances, but our internal mental states, the disturbing attitudes of clinging, attachment, anger, and confusion. And these do not vanish by shaving the head or putting on monastic robes and going to live in a monastery. If it was so easy to be free of anger, then wouldn't everybody become ordained? So living as a nun is not a way to avoid or escape problems. It's for us to look at ourselves, for we can no longer engage in distractions such as shopping or entertainment, alcohol, or other intoxicants. Monastics are committed to eliminating the root causes of suffering in our own minds and in showing others how to do the same. Canadians are among the most charitable people in the world, and it shows in our culture. So I and my students, my lay students, I don't have any monastic students, we work for the benefit of the poor. We help those who are homeless by providing them with items that they will need because of our extremes in temperature. So the poor and homeless in Vietnam have a fairly stable temperature range. But here the homeless live in temperatures that range from plus 40 degrees Celsius in the summer and minus 25 degrees Celsius in the winter. And nobody chooses to be homeless. They are a product of their conditioning. They may be mentally ill or have an addiction. An addiction is a symptom of mental illness. Or they may have other unfortunate circumstances that may occur in their lives. And as a nun, I look behind all of this to see the human being who is struggling. And I also volunteer with a group of Catholic monks who help the poor in Toronto. And many of the volunteers are Buddhist from different traditions, and we all, Catholics, Protestants, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Buddhists, all work together to help those less fortunate. So by taming our own monkey minds, nuns can show other people the methods to do so. And as lay people practice, their lives will be happier and their marriages better. They will be less stressed and angry. And because they are Westerners who have immersed themselves in the Dharma, the nuns are cultural bridges between East and West. Often they have lived in multiple cultures and can not only translate from one language to another, but also from one set of cultural concepts and norms to another. So in bringing Buddhism to the West and engaging in the ongoing process of differentiating the Dharma from its Asian cultural norms, they provide invaluable help along the path to those interested in the Buddhist teachings. So nuns are used to speaking to diverse audiences, and we communicate well with them, I hope, and from Canadian high schools to college students or to Asian senior citizens. And one of my duties is to teach Vietnamese children the Dharma. Their parents don't speak English, and the children don't want to speak Vietnamese, though they do have to go to classes. The children are between two cultures, and they struggle to please their parents and to fit in with their friends who may not be Vietnamese. And a monk in a Sri Lankan temple has told me they have the same problem with their young people. So at the Vietnamese New Year, or Wesak or Buddha's birthday, I attend the local Pure Land temple. Because there are so few monastics here, it isn't unusual for monks and nuns from different traditions to celebrate and support each other's temples during festive occasions. And one large Wesak festival held close to here consists of monks and nuns from Sri Lanka, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Japan, Tibet, Khmer, and Thailand, and we all celebrate together. And as a Westerner, I am proud that certain pressures within Asian societies, for example, we nuns can easily receive teachings from a variety of masters of different Buddhist traditions. We are not bound by centuries-old misconceptions about other traditions, nor do we face social pressures to be loyal to Buddhist tradition of our own country in the same way that many Asian nuns are. I have studied in the Tibetan tradition, not a lot, but some, the Theravadan tradition, and in the Korean Zen tradition, as well as the Vietnamese tradition. So this gives we nuns tremendous latitude in our education and enables us to adopt the best from various Buddhist traditions into our lifestyle. So this enhances our abilities to teach others and to promote dialogue and harmony among various Buddhist traditions. And some of the lay people who have come to learn meditation from me are from other traditions. And there's one Tibetan monk who, when visiting my city, sits in meditation with us. So Western nuns offer many skills. Some are Dharma teachers, others translate both oral and written teachings. A number of nuns have engaged in long meditation retreats, serving society through their example and their practice. And some nuns are counselors who help Dharma students work through the difficulties that arise in practice. And a Buddhist approach to grief counseling is a course I teach through the Toronto Centre for Applied Buddhism, an affiliate of the University of Toronto. And many people, particularly women, feel more comfortable discussing emotional or personal issues with a nun rather than a monk. And other nuns work in daycare centers, in hospices with the terminally ill, or in refugee communities in their own countries and abroad. And some nuns are artists, others are writers, therapists, or professors at universities. Many nuns work in the background. They are the crucial but unseen workers whose selfless labor enable Dharma centers and the resident teachers to serve the public. So Western nuns have the opportunity to be very creative in their practice and in setting up institutions that reflect an effective way to live Dharma life in the West. Because they are Western, they are not subject to many of the social pressures and ingrained self-concepts that perhaps Asian nuns must deal with. And on the other hand, because we are trained in the Dharma and have often lived in Asian cultures, we are faithful to the purity of the tradition. And this prevents us from throwing the Buddha out with the bathwater, an old expression. I'll explain that if you don't understand it. Excuse me. So in this way, nuns are not seeking to change Buddhism, but to be changed by it. So the essence of the Dharma cannot be changed and should not be tampered with. And people often ask if we face discrimination because we are women. And of course, most societies in the world are male-oriented, and Buddhist ones are no exception. Traditionally, the Sangha has received their material requisites: food, shelter, clothing, and medicine through donations from the public. And when these are lacking, the nuns find it more difficult to receive proper training and education. And as Western nuns, we face similar external circumstances. But nevertheless, Western nuns are generally self-confident and assertive, and thus we are apt to take advantage of situations that present themselves. I'm invited by Theravada temple abbots to participate in dana offering. I have been asked to lead a meditation at one Theravada temple, and to teach some lay people at another Khmer Theravada temple. And when there was a procession of monks and nuns for a large Wesak festival, I waited for the Theravada monks to go ahead of me, and while they implored me to go ahead of them in the procession. And on the other hand, I felt some anger whenever some monks treat the nuns poorly. But none of these monks or nuns were Westerners. So being a Dharma practitioner, I could not escape the fact that anger is a defilement that misconstrues a situation as therefore a cause of suffering. I had to face my anger and my arrogance and apply the Dharma antidotes to deal with them. And now it's actually intriguing and fun to deal with feeling offended. I observe the sense of I that feels offended, the I who wants to retaliate. I pause and examine, who is this I? Or I stop and reflect. We learn to improve bad circumstances. I'm wanting to close up because I know I've gone quite a bit. With the hundreds of other nuns, years ago we recited the Pratimoksha precepts together, Theravada and Mahayana, including Vajrayana, and I felt so honored to be among all these nuns, and the largest number of nuns to be there since the time of the Buddha. And due to the number of us, we broke into pairs to confess our transgressions. And I was paired with a very high, well-known Tibetan nun. We both had the same transgressions to confess, as we live in the West. Handling money, driving a vehicle, going out to buy food on our own. There isn't anybody to handle our money for us or to drive us anywhere or to bring us food, so we have to do this. I met one Canadian Buddhist nun ordained in Sri Lanka. She was so happy to have found another nun to compare our lives. And unhappily, I heard a year later that she had disrobed after 10 years because it was too difficult for her to survive. So in short, while Western nuns face certain difficulties, these are very same situations can become the fuel propelling us towards internal transformation. Women who have the inclination and ability to receive and keep the monastic precepts in the West experience a special fortune and joy through the spiritual practice. And through our practice in overcoming attachment, developing a kind heart, and realizing the ultimate nature of phenomena, we can benefit many people directly and indirectly, whether or not oneself as a monastic, the benefit of having nuns in our society is evident. So, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.
Thank you very much, Bhikkhuni and Quang, for enlightening us the wonderful topic today. Like us, Bhikkhuni in Canada, we have goals, laws, classless, and useful information on that you have given all class members. Through your presentations, I believe that all the participants and members have understood clearly and fully the prominent features of the life as beginning in Canada. We are very grateful that you took the time and effort to prepare the lesson plan. Says your story of your life to be here today, giving us this valuable knowledge. It's lot of flashback in its full motions. And listening to the story you have shared, I feel the love and respect that you have for your master. It can be said that the dishes are like the shores of water to water and soil to nourish us. I can find this sympathies because I also had dishes like that. This was the one for step me from the swamp. I very reference to him. Once again, thank you, Bhikkhuni Quang. Now it's time for us to come to Q&A sessions. Anyone who wants to ask or to stress guests, kindly open your mic and feel free to ask. Don't hesitate, please. All questions or warmly welcome in this session, please. Yes. Thomas brother Đức Ngộ, please.
Dear Ambassador, do you hear me? Did you hear me?
I can hear you.
Quang.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. When opening the presentation, the signal is not well. I can't hear clearly. Okay, I will ask you, would you like to talk about and to nuns like in how advantage and disadvantage to none like in the Canada? Are you hear me?
You're broken up. It's not clear. It's broken up.
Yeah. Your signal is as well. Okay, I want to ask you how advanced and disadvantage are to none like in the Canada.
And nun's life in Canada. What were you going to ask me?
Advantage.
Advantage?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And this advantage.
Well, the advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was hoping that I was hoping that I covered some of that in my talk, but the advantages of being a nun are that I have an opportunity to practice very well, and that I have an opportunity to help all sentient beings, any beings, whether it's humans or even humans, we help. So that's one of the advantages of being a nun. Plus, I have the monastic community that I do know, even though we're not all from the same tradition, we support one another by, just through talking, keeping in touch with one another. The disadvantages, I haven't really felt any disadvantages. Even as I said in my talk, if people want to say something to me like because they don't understand that that we shave our heads or anything like that, that doesn't bother me if they say anything to me about that. Sometimes it gives me an opportunity to educate them. And I have actually had people who just who see me on the street and started talking have come here to learn how to meditate. So I don't really feel any great disadvantages. I have talked to other nuns who've had huge disadvantages, but usually they haven't had the support that I've had.
Yeah.
And usually their disadvantages were they didn't have for food. And it's not part of the culture for the lay people to support the monastics here, so nobody was bringing them food, so they wouldn't have anything to eat, or they didn't have any money to go and buy food. But that's not a problem. That's not a problem for me.
Yeah, it's very difficult. This explain the money, the culture when you apply in the Canada. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I hear you talk about the meditation. It's necessary for the monk and the nun life. It have a more benefit here that or like later in the boss of the shop. Okay, what did you think about that?
I didn't catch the last part of that. About meditation?
Yeah, the meditation. Yeah, said I hear that if we just listen to the Dhamma, the teaching, okay, but don't practice. But the practice, we are like a leader in the pot of shop. Yeah, pot of shop. What do you think about that?
Well, here we have the meditation, chanting, and I give a talk, and the talk is always based on the teachings. From one of the sutras. And I teach meditation here too. Usually I teach maybe like a 10-week course on meditation. Because don't forget, many people that come to a Buddhist temple have maybe never meditated before, don't even know what it is. They've heard of it, but they don't know what it is. They haven't been raised in the Buddhist culture. So they don't even see it happening as they're growing up. So they come to it as adults. And so they have to learn right from the very beginning. One of the things that's different, maybe from Vietnamese, say in Vietnam to here, there's a man I know here who teaches. He's in the Theravadan tradition. He's lived in Thailand most of his life. He's just moved back to Canada after, 50 years or something. And when he teaches, the lay people are not interested in what he's saying, and he's teaching right from the sutras. And the reason is because Westerners have to be taught in a little different way. They have to be taught in a way that's more experiential. So it's not just a lecture. You don't just talk to them about the Dharma. You don't just talk to them about what the sutra says. You have to show them how that applies to their everyday life, and use examples from their life. Otherwise, they're not going to understand it. We teach differently here than in Vietnam. When I was in Vietnam, I was teaching English to the nuns at the temple, and my first observation was, this is just like school in the 1950s in Canada, but it's not the way it's taught here now. So how this, when the adults are learning meditation, you have to break them into groups, have them discuss it. What did they learn from it? How can they apply that in their life? And it's not just an individual at that point. We break them into, sometimes I break them into pairs, 2 people, or sometimes I break them into 4 or 5 people for them to discuss and talk about it. And so it's not just like tonight when I talked for a long time. I never talk a long time like that. I give a little bit of information and get them to consider that, and that they have to look at that closely and apply it to their life. How do you apply this ancient teaching from 26, 27, 2800 years ago to your everyday life here? Because if you can't make that bridge, then it just becomes an intellectual pursuit. So it has to be a practical pursuit.
Thank you, Josh. And
Yes.
nowadays, the living nowadays the living the standard is more higher, go up, but moral senses go down. The same, the moral sense is go down. Beside that, how many monks and nuns lazy don't keep morality of the Buddha. Okay, although they became in the monk or nun, but they don't believe in the triple champ. Okay, would you like to advise for them?
They don't believe in the which?
Yeah. Would you like to advise for the young monks and nuns nowadays? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand what your question is.
Did you hear me?
I can hear you, but I'm still...
You did not understand. Yeah. Okay, I repeat my question. Yeah. Nowadays, the living standard is more higher. Okay, more higher, but the moral standards is go down. Yeah. Beside that, have many monks and laziness. Okay, don't keep morality of the Buddha. Okay, although they becoming the monks or nuns, but they don't believe in the triple champ. Yeah, would you like to advise for them? Yeah, would you like to advise for them?
I'm gonna just see if I understand what you're asking. You're saying many monks and nuns understand the morality, but don't keep it. Is that what you were saying? Yes. Okay. So I can't. Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
What I can't speak for. I can only speak for myself, because I don't see it. The monks and nuns I know here, I have not seen or heard any rumors that they are not keeping the precepts. So, and as far as morality is concerned, I'm very strict with that for myself. But I don't know any monks or nuns, and I'm not saying it doesn't occur. It's just I don't know of any monks or nuns who do not keep the moral part of the precepts. I have, when I was in Vietnam, I did hear of a couple. Oh, and I met, when I was down in Boston, there was one monk there who had abused children, sexually abused children. And he also, when a nun said that she was going to report him, he beat her up and she went to the hospital because he beat her so badly. So having said that, I'm saying, yes, these things occur, and I would not have known about that if I hadn't met this nun who was in the hospital. So I'm saying it does happen, and he was not a Western monk, though. He was a Vietnamese monk. That's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing, and I'm not saying it wouldn't happen here. It certainly could. And I've even talked to the monks about it. I said to them, the Catholic Church has gotten themselves into an awful lot of trouble because of sexual abuse of children by the priests. And I've said to them, don't let that happen with Buddhism, because people have left the Catholic Church. There was one time, this is a holy weekend in the Christian religion. This is Easter. So I drove by a Catholic church, which years ago you wouldn't have been able to get down the street. There would have been so many cars trying to get to the church. There were 2 cars in the parking lot. Whereas, and I'm saying, because so many people have left the church because of these tragic abuses that the church did. And my worry is, and this could be nuns too, but I've talked to the monks about it. Don't let this happen in Buddhism, because we're just trying to get people in Canada interested in Buddhism and becoming Buddhists. If they hear even the slightest indication of a moral breaking of a precept by a monk, people will leave Buddhism. So it's really, really important for that to be made clear. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Dharma Brother Đức Ngộ. Next question, please, Dharma Brother Giác Toàn. Please open your mic.
Hi, Dharma sister.
I'm trying to find you.
Do you often practice meditation, and how did you practice?
I'm sorry, could you say that? Could you repeat that, please?
Do you often practice meditation, and how did you practice?
I practice meditation at least twice a day. So 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour meditation, about maybe 45 minutes of chanting in the morning. In the evening, 2 hours of meditation. Plus, in the evening, I also do some chanting, but it's usually chanting if somebody has told me that they know somebody who is ill, who is sick, then I will chant for them. Oh, and every evening, every evening I chant the bell gata, the ringing the bell, every evening at 7 o'clock. And then homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So yes, there is a practice. And then my daily life is pretty mundane. Sometimes, it's like doing the laundry, cooking, things like that, boring things, or things that need to be done. But then there's also, a couple of days ago, I met with a young man who wants to become a monk. So I wanted to interview him to find out why he wanted to become a monk. What was the reason he wanted to become a monk? Because many Westerners, and maybe this is the same in Vietnam, they want to become monks or nuns because their life is so stressful, and they think that living in a monastery is going to make them all peaceful. But I have to explain to them, wherever you go, you're taking this mind with you. So you're not going to be any more peaceful sometimes in a monastery than you are where you are now. So I suggested, and this is the benefit, I think, of living in a place where there are so many temples from different. They're ethnic temples, because mine is the only one in this area where we speak English, but there's a Vietnamese temple not far from here. There's a Khmer temple not far from here, a Japanese temple, a Tibetan temple. These are all within this city, and I live in it's not a big city, it's a smallish city. And so I suggested I was going to introduce them to the monk I know at the Khmer temple, because in the Theravadan tradition, they can take, what do you call it? Temporary ordination. They can ordain just for a temporary period of time. So I suggested he try that, just to see how he likes it, and to stay at least 3 months, I told him. So he's interested in doing that. So that's the sort of thing I get calls from people who are having terrible mental stress. They want to just talk to me for a period of time. Sometimes it's just on the phone. Sometimes I will meet them. If it's a man, I meet them somewhere at a coffee shop. So it's not just me and the man here. But if it's, but usually we meet somewhere and we have a chance to talk somewhere.
Thank you, Dhamma. And next person, brother Dhamma brother Quang, please.
Hi, Dhamma sister.
Hello?
Yes. I don't have any question, but I want to say that you look very compassionate and you look blessed, and your current life is even more beautiful when you become a Bhikkhuni. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now we will go to the next questions. I have a question from the monk Van Tinh. I want to send to you. What it says mind? How do you realize when you practice meditation? Are you clearly?
Could you repeat that, please? I think I understood, but just repeat it just in case.
Okay. What it says mind? How do you realize your mind when you practice meditations?
I tell people this is what I do for myself, but I also teach this. When people sitting in meditation on a cushion, sometimes they sit on a chair here. Not everybody's, we're in the West, we're not used to sitting on the floor as much or lower to the ground. So some people have to sit in a chair. When I'm teaching, I say this sitting, when you're sitting meditating, everything that's happening in your life will happen in your mind when you're meditating. The argument you had with somebody earlier in the day, the worrying about something that's going to happen tomorrow, it could be anything. Watch your thoughts. Watch what is happening in your mind. And when you watch them, you can see Maybe there's thoughts that continually come up over and over again, in which case I say sometimes that's something that you need to look after. You need to look at that in your life. But also it's important for people to recognize that when they sit in meditation as a practice, you're just practicing then. You have to take everything that you learn in your meditation about how your mind works, the observation of the mind, the observation of what's happening in your body, your feelings, your thoughts, your sensations, all of these things, you take that out into the world. You go out into the world with that. So sometimes people come in and they said, oh, I had a really good meditation. I was so peaceful and calm in my meditation. Like, oh, that's wonderful. I said, so what's going to happen as soon as you walk out in the street? Are you going to take that peace and meditation with you? Or are you going to be upset because you got a ticket on your car for parking in the wrong spot, or whatever? Or when you go home and your children are fighting, and what do you do when that happens? You have to take whatever it is that you're learning in your meditation when you're sitting, that has to go with you when you're not sitting. So that I teach that your entire life becomes a meditation, not just when you're sitting.
Yeah, thank you, sister. Dhamma brothers, Đồng Khải, please open your mic.
Hi, Dhamma sister.
Hello?
Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
When meditation, then the body will not move. The mind will appear many thoughts. So how to control it?
What we're trying to do is we're trying to tame the mind. So how you control it? If it's just a very basic meditation, you teach the mind to focus on one thing. So it could be your breathing. That's very, very simple meditation. And yet it's very hard to do. You know, people who are learning how to meditate, I say, all you have to do is follow your breathing. And they have trouble doing it. As soon as they start to follow their breathing, they're immediately thinking about something else. Immediately thinking about something that they should be doing, or that they're going to do after the meditation's over, or as I said, sometimes it could be they've had an argument with somebody, and that comes into their mind. As soon as that happens, then you bring your mind back to your breathing. And if you can do that consistently for a period of time, then you're already controlling your own mind. You have to say, is my mind controlling me, or am I controlling my mind? You want to learn to control your mind. You want to be able to focus on one thing. Initially, when you first start, it's just your breathing. Then if you want to go into vipassana meditation, then you're focusing on your, not only your thoughts, but on your feelings, your bodily sensations, all of these things, and they become the focus of your meditation. I actually taught eating meditation to some people who had asked me to speak to them about meditation and addictions. And these people had problems with, they had an eating disorder where they ate too much, or they ate the wrong foods, and they were quite obese. So I was teaching them eating meditation, and they had great difficulty with that. They had great difficulty with slowing down their eating and stopping and tasting what it was that they were eating and the texture of it in their mouth. This is so that instead of the breath they're focusing on the food and the sensations of the swallowing of it. All of this became the focus of their meditation. And one woman came up to me afterwards and said she didn't realize how fast she ate. That she had been eating so fast her whole life that I don't know if you're aware of this, but our stomach is usually full for 10 minutes before our brain registers that it's full. So we can eat for 10 minutes even though our stomach is full. If you eat too fast, that's going to happen for sure. But if you eat mindfully, slowly, just taking a bite, experiencing that, and swallowing and doing everything slowly, chewing it very, very well, and then swallowing, then you don't overeat. So again, we focus first on our breathing, then we spread it out. But we always use the body because the beauty of the body is it's right here. It's portable. I can do it anywhere. So I don't have to be sitting here to do it. I can do it if I'm working. If I was at a desk job, I can sit at my desk and do it. If I'm doing manual labor, something with my hands, that becomes the meditation. Everything becomes the meditation. So all aspects of your life become meditation, and you are training the mind to be balanced and focused.
Thank you so much, my sister.
Next questions. Dharma sister Như His, please open your mic.
Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Hello, Dharma sister. Thank you for your talk about your life in Canada. I have a question for you. Can you share us what a Buddhist festival can take place in Canada every year? Are they as same as a Buddhist festival in Vietnam? Can you share us? Thank you.
Not exactly the same because of our weather. For instance, the Vietnamese New Year, which is always celebrated at the temples, we have to do it indoors. I don't think I've been to one Vietnamese New Year's in Canada where there hasn't been a big snowstorm on that day, the first day we're celebrating. So we have to do it indoors. So we have the what do you call them, the dragon dancers, the dragons that come in and dance. All of that is indoors. We can't go outside to do it because it's a blizzard outside sometimes, a lot of snow. The same with Wesak, or the Buddha's birthday, which is coming up in May. We're never quite sure what the weather's going to be like in May. It can be cold still, or it can be a lovely, beautiful day. So usually I've held it indoors here, and then a lot of people come, and I don't have a lot of room, but a lot of people come. If it's a nice day, then we can go out into the back. After the ceremony, we have a ceremony for Wesak, or for the Buddha's birthday. Also, because of the fact I mentioned in my talk that there aren't that many of us around, but there's I don't know if you can envision a map, but from Toronto all the way around Lake Ontario to Niagara Falls, it's called the Golden Horseshoe. And that Golden Horseshoe has a lot of temples because the majority of the Canadian population is in southern Ontario, which is where we are. And what happens is we have a big Wesak festival in a place called Mississauga, between Toronto and Hamilton. That festival has all the monastics go from all the temples all the way around, so that we can all celebrate together. Because otherwise it would just be small groups. When we celebrate the Buddha's birthday here, it's just a small group that celebrates. But then, so I always have the Buddha's birthday on a different date than the Vietnamese temple up the street, because when the Vietnamese temple is having their big Buddha's birthday celebration, they want me to be there. So I go there that day, and we have different monastics from other temples come, so that there's a few of us there. Otherwise, there would be just the monk and me there. There wouldn't be any other monastics. So some monastics come from other temples from other cities to help. So that's what's different, I think. I've been to big celebrations in Vietnam, and they're huge compared to what we can do here. But we still celebrate them, and we still enjoy them.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer.
Okay.
Are you the sister?
Hi, Dhamma sister. Can you share with me why you like Buddhism and you become a nun? Can you share with me why you like Buddhism and you become a nun?
I was not raised in Buddhism, but I had sort of my ideas, my beliefs about the world, about how things should be, sort of in a moral sense. Also the idea of compassion and loving kindness. And when I first came across that, it was actually with a Tibetan nun, and she wanted me to go to the Tibetan temple with her. That's why I have some training, minimal training, but in Tibetan tradition. But it didn't feel right for me. I'm not saying it's not the right tradition. It's right for a lot of people, and I respect it. It was not until I went into a Zen temple, a Korean Zen temple, that I thought, as soon as I walked in and I heard the monk talk, I felt like I was home. I'm home now, and that's what it felt like. And so I stayed. I went there the first time. I didn't know anything, and then I just stayed and I stayed and I studied and I practiced. I became a student with that monk. And it wasn't until one day I was driving around. It was in a snowstorm here, and I saw the Dharma wheel. You know the Dharma wheel? I saw that, a sign, and I thought that looked like a Buddhist sign. So I went in and I knocked on the door, and a Vietnamese monk answered the door. And it was through them, I ended up teaching them, helping them with their English, and I ended up studying with them, and that's how I got involved with the Vietnamese tradition.
Yeah, thank you, sister. Next questions. Brother Tungis, please open your mic.
Dear Dhamma sister, how long have you been become a Bhikkhuni?
Became a Bhikkhuni in 2009. I became a Shramanarika in 2002, and I became a Bhikkhuni in 2009. I think Shikshamana, I became Shikshamana in 2004, I think it was, 2004. Yeah.
I think now we will go to the next questions. Sister Vạn Phúc, please open your mic.
Morning, Dhamma sister. I want to ask, are a Guru Dhammas really necessary for us and why?
Say that again. Is the Dhamma necessary for us?
8 Guru Dhammas.
Is the Buddha Dharma necessary for us? Is that the question? Oh, Guru Dhammas. Okay. I think it's all necessary for us to know. I study sutras that I'm not interested in studying them, some of them, but I study them anyway. I think it's always helpful and useful for us to be able to study all of these things. Do you think it's not necessary? Did she hear me?
Next question. Dhamma sister Huệ News, please open your mic.
Hi, Dhamma sister. Can you tell me
Yes.
why it's so important for Bhikkhuni to have their spiritually and practice?
Why is it important for a bhikkhuni to what? I didn't hear that.
Spiritually and practice.
I'm missing one word there. I'm not sure if I understand what the word is. Could you type the word at the bottom?
Thank you, sister. The next question. Dhamma sister Văn Điền, please open your mic.
Hi, Dhamma sister.
Điền, Văn Điền, hầu dạ Văn Điền.
How do you feel when you become a meditation teacher? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I had to think. I've been doing it for so long now. I can't remember how I felt initially. I'll be honest with you. I started teaching before I became a nun. I started teaching meditation because so many people didn't know how to meditate, and I don't think I saw myself as a teacher. But because the people needed it, I started to teach it. And how did I feel? I was happy. I still get people contacting me many, many years later telling me how it benefited them. So I feel good then.
Eunice Han, Dhamma sister. The next question. Dhamma brother Bổn Việt, please open your mic.
Good afternoon, Dhamma sister. How do you feel Buddhism has changed your life?
Well, it changed my life because now I'm a bhikkhuni. Before that, I was I worked in the medical system. I worked in a hospital, and then after I worked in a hospital, I went back to school and I became a psychotherapist. So I had a private practice in an office in Toronto and an office in another city, and I left all of that to become a bhikkhuni. So my life has changed a lot.
Thank you, Dhamma sister.
Thank you, brothers. Now, May I request Thomas Sister Pháp Như to give voice to him. Sister, please open your mic. Sister. Thomas Sister Pháp Như, open your mic, please.
Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Dear participants, I'm going to offer vote of 10 to our guest speaker, attendees, and participants. First of all, we are very pleased to receive the encouragement and instruction of most Venerable Dr. Thích Đông Thanh, Director of the School of Buddhist Studies, of faculty members and teachers to found this pioneer club in the fight of Buddhist studies. For this wonderful presentation, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, who not only accepted our official invitation as a guest speaker today, but also delivered such an excellent presentation and discussion on life as a Bhikkhuni in Canada. Thank you very much, Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, for enlightening us a wonderful topic today. We have got lots of knowledge and useful information that you have given our club members through your presentation. I believe that our participants and members here have understood clearly and fully about Brahmana and future of life as a Bhikkhuni in Canada. Once again, thank you so much for your excellent presentation and discussion, sister. In addition, on this session, I would like to express the gratefulness and thankfulness to my beloved members of the club and our audience of School of Buddhist Studies in Binding. We are not here without your support, cooperation, encouragement, and effort. I believe that with this persistent weekly activities together, our goal of perfection of Dharma English will be realized and recognized in a happy manner. Keep it up together. We will be better at English in the near future. Come on, our audience. I also would like to send my special I also would like to send my special thanks to our moderator today, Dharma Brother Nguyen Yak. I'm really impressed from your words and speeches. Congratulations your good performance today, sister. Last but not the least, I'm thankful to all participants for joining us in this international interactive meeting. Welcome you all to our international meeting next week. May you all experience true peace and happiness in this life and the future. May you all be healthy in body, peaceful in mind, happy in life, and successful in career or spiritual path. Thank you very much. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Good night, my master.
Thank you very much, Thomas Sister Pháp Như. Now, we are going to come to the last session by the singing our traditional song of the club. I have right, I am home. Before that, please come to the honors to dedicate these special sessions. First, I want to give honorary certificate for the Bhikkhuni in Canada, guest of honor for her tireless presentations online as Bhikkhuni Canada, organized Thai Winter Dhamma English Club in Province, Vietnam, 17th April 2022. Next, I want to give this certificate for Thích Nữ Hiền Nguyện, This will confirm that Bhikkhuni is an esteemed member of organization space in the study of critical international medicine with guest speaker Bhikkhuni Tinh, Canada, organized by Hill Dhamma English Club in Vietnam. Following, I want to give the certificate of appreciation for Thích Nữ Tác Như work in the voice of the series quickly international with guest speaker Bhikkhuni Tinh while organizing. Next is finally, I want to give this certificate for me. Thích Nhận Giác has a sleep performance MC in the weekly international meeting with guest speaker Bhikkhuni Tinh, Canada.
Thank you very much.
Now, please join hand indications.
I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I am solid, I am free. I am solid, I am free. In the ultimate I dwell. In the ultimate I dwell.
Finally, I would like to express my thanks and appreciations for all members of the club. The extra clear sessions were unable to finish in silence without all your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dhamma Sister Bhikkhuni Tinh Quang, all members and interns for coming and joining our section today. So you have given a wonderful presentation on the life as a Bhikkhuni in Canada. And once again, and our students, I think, really happy to meet you, and we learned a lot, experience some education, your life, childhood, and even everything in Canada, especially the Bhikkhuni, Vietnamese Bhikkhuni was the original from Canada. So thank you so much, sister, Dhamma sister, and all members. And good night. Take care. And best wishes. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we have to end our section today. See you in our next meeting. Hope to see you again. Amitabha.